This is Lessons in the Challenges of Leadership, the series that enables managers to achieve the remarkable. Podcast, video, short reads. Conceived, developed and presented by Siebert Neathling.
This time, we look at growth in the general sense of the word, size. In the previous two episodes on growth, we spoke about personal growth and growing the quality of teams, but growing bigger is a very different challenge. I have many friends and clients who are entrepreneurs. They all find growth challenging, so much so that some are determined not to grow bigger. A wonderful and highly successful client of ours recently renovated a beautiful old building to be their new offices. It has a foyer, 2 meeting rooms, a kitchen, bathrooms, and workstations upstairs for 10 people. When asked whether that wouldn't limit his growth, his answer was, exactly. He, like many, want to be more profitable but not necessarily bigger. The concept of scaling your business is not for everyone, and there are many reasons why. Small businesses face many challenges as they grow. I've certainly experienced them. Problem one is that economies of scale do not happen in a straight line. In many countries, businesses with small numbers of employees, up to 10 say, don't pay payroll tax or similar penalties for success. Once that number is exceeded, the new tax kicks in. There's a big jump in cost and administration disproportionate to the gains. A similar thing happens when companies need bigger premises, huge outlay no matter how you finance it, and slow returns. I remember a stockbroker once telling me that when a company announces they are going to build a new head office, sell your shares. There is often pain before gain, and the gain sometimes doesn't materialize. But back to smaller businesses. There's a point where sophisticated HR management processes and payroll management are needed. Companies find that they need a dedicated HR manager at around 30 staff, in my experience. Even financial management requires a dedicated resource to deal with the complexity when the number of staff, clients, and projects increase. Very few businesses are exempt from this, notably some tech companies who can scale exponentially if their solutions are largely automated. The next issue is the difference between the leadership demands of small enterprises and bigger businesses. Founders often, but not always mind you, simply don't have the ability to delegate effectively and to elevate their own use of time to the strategic, not the operational. And when they do, they often don't have the right people in place to run the daily management effectively. But you know all of this, right? I could give you a list of do's and don'ts about growing, but I know that you'll ignore that anyway. The entrepreneurial mindset is inherently optimistic. No one in their right mind would take on the stress and risk of growing without that positivity bias. So let me rather share with you a few observations that are not as obvious as systems and risks and financial metrics. 1. The bigger you grow, the more clarity you need about your values. If you don't, the people who've made you successful will feel betrayed and become nostalgic for the good old days when you were small, rather than enthusiastically support your growth. 2. If you grow organically, you have to invest heavily in developing your existing people and in recruiting the right new people into leadership positions. There's a rule of thirds that's a useful heuristic. As you go through a strong growth period, 1/3 of your leadership should stay in the same positions. 1/3 should be promoted into new roles, and 1/3 should be new people recruited from outside. If your growth is so fast that you can't do this, and you mainly recruit from outside, you will definitely struggle to maintain the values and essential DNA of your organization. It's a rough rule, and sometimes the maths don't stack up, but the principle is a good one. 3. If you grow by merger and acquisition, you will very likely fail to unlock the promised potential of the deal. The only way to prevent this is to have a brilliant integration and optimization plan and execute it brilliantly. I have a lot of experience helping companies extract value from their acquisitions, and I'm almost always called in when it's too late, when a lot of the anticipated value has been squandered. This is such a well-researched domain. I don't understand why acquisition teams persist in focusing on the financial without planning for the psychological. The kind of change that happens when you blend existing teams is always difficult. There is a power imbalance. In fact, I was once told that there is no such thing as a merger. All mergers are experienced as acquisitions. In this context, you see all the behavioral challenges we discussed in our episodes on change, including passive aggression and reluctant compliance. I can give you a brilliant example of a leader who truly understood how to lead an acquisition. I've been fortunate to meet a few famous leaders in my life, Nelson Mandela for one. But the best example of practical leadership I've ever witnessed was at a commercial brewery. In keeping with us not using the names of examples in this series, I'm going to give him the pseudonym David. He is the best leader I have ever seen in operation. So in the 1990s, I worked for this fast-growing brewing company that had ambitions to become one of the largest and best in the world. They regularly acquired smaller breweries and either absorbed their brands or replaced them with their own more popular products. Brewing is a very partisan industry. Workers are loyal to their brands and spend their lives competing against others with similar loyalties. So becoming the GM of a recently acquired brewery is a tough assignment. You're not going to be enthusiastically welcomed. And that is the environment David entered as a young manager, only just into his 30s. His first big act was a symbolic one. He hired a digger and on the weekend had his personal parking spot dug up and converted into a small garden, complete with lawn, a bench, and a bird bath. He hadn't told anyone of his plan, so on the Monday, some colleagues thought that it was some elaborate practical joke at his expense. David said nothing, but from that day on, he parked his car in a different place every day, behind packaging or next to the laboratories or at the grain silos. He then walked to his office with a notepad in hand and stopped to talk to a few workers every day, asking about their jobs and their families. Back in his office, his secretary would write the information on old-fashioned Rolodex cards. Within a few months, David had learned the names of every single member of the staff of more than 300. I once saw him stop at someone and say, "Hi, you must be George. I heard you were starting in this section today. Welcome. I'm David." As he walked away, I could see George shrugging his shoulders and mouthing to his colleagues, "Who the hell's that?" "That's the GM," someone whispered with a smile. So David quickly endeared himself to everyone, but he was no pushover. On another occasion, I saw him come into his office and ask, "Who's accountable for pallets? Get him on the line." He made it clear that the pallets were not stacked to regulation and that they posed a fire hazard. He also had a very strict approach to meetings. He would start exactly on time, whether everyone was there or not. He stuck to the agenda, expected everyone to be thoroughly prepared, and expected meaningful participation. He did also have a sense of humor. On one occasion, when everyone else was delayed by a local evacuation alarm, he pretended to have been meeting by himself all along. As everyone walked in, he said to the empty seats, "Okay, that's item 1, salary increases done. Let's move on to the second point on the agenda." David empowered everyone who showed enthusiasm and motivation, including young and inexperienced supervisors. But he had no tolerance for disrespectful behavior and expected a solid work ethic from everyone. Most telling of his success as a leader was the farewell speech when he left the brewery to take on an international role. 2 workers in fluoro vests delivered a speech that was an extended metaphor about David the gardener. They said that he managed the brewery like a garden. He removed all the weeds. He planted new trees, propping them up with supports when they were small, then removing the supports when they were strong enough to stand by themselves. He sheltered young plants that were still growing. He shaped the trees and shrubs to ensure all plants got sunlight. He planned ahead for the new season and fertilized the soil. The extended metaphor went on, and everyone nodded and smiled as they recognized the analogies and recognized themselves and their experiences of this great gardener. I was still young then, and David made a great impression. I worked at head office and never reported to him directly, but just being in his leadership environment from time to time inspired me to emulate him. He called his approach MBWA, management by walking around. I have known so many leaders who have no idea of their organizations beyond the thick carpets of the C-suite. I've also met many who comfortably move among their people, not as an internal public relations exercise, but as an authentic expression of their own desire to know and understand their people and the environment. Years later, I met the head of a large public sector organization with more than 20,000 staff, who walked through the building shortly after being appointed to look for a staff member whom he wanted to ask a question. People literally parted like waves as he approached, never having seen a senior leader on their floor before. When he spent time at the staff member's desk, even getting down on his haunches to look at a document, the murmurs ran through the building that something extraordinary was happening. Call it the common touch if you'd like. There is something extremely powerful in someone with considerable authority breaking down barriers, engaging with people in their own environments, and authentically expressing interest in the work and lives of others. It's kind of a decent thing to do. So these stories might seem like distractions from the topic of growth, but I think it is fundamental to leadership in growing organizations. Of course, the financial metrics are critical. Systems and processes need to keep up with the realities of scale. But human leadership is needed to engage, motivate, and inspire people to perform. The bigger you grow, the more you have to invest in this, if only to neutralize the cold anonymity of size. So next time, we will look at innovation. See you then.